U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins has announced the U.S. will be limiting China from buying farmland.
With this announcement today, we are taking this purpose and our American farmland back. American agriculture is not just about feeding our families, but about protecting our nation and standing up to foreign adversaries who are buying our farmland, stealing our research, and creating dangerous vulnerabilities in the very systems that sustain us. Reshoring and nearshoring our food and agriculture supply chain is essential for our nation's security. In coordination with the White House, the Departments of Treasury, Defense, Homeland Security, and Justice, as well as state governors, state agriculture commissioners, local, tribal, and territorial governments, today we announced the USDA's National Farm Security Action Plan. This plan includes 7 key action items, and there's a lot of people here that I want you to hear from, so I'm not going to go one by one, but just very quickly. It's on our website. The press has gotten a preview of it, and we can ask some questions once we finish the main program. But very quickly, and perhaps the most important, the first of the 7, is securing and protecting American farmland ownership. Actively engaging at every level of government to take swift legislative and executive action to ban the purchase of American farmland by Chinese nationals and other foreign adversaries. Standing on the shoulders of great governors, 3 of whom are standing behind me, who have already been leading the way on this issue.
Okay, so they're going to be banning. Now, China as a government doesn't buy farmland, so they're specifically talking about Chinese nationals, Chinese companies, private companies, which, you know, you could debate whether or not they're really truly private, but Chinese nationals, Chinese companies from buying the farmland. Here's also Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, talking about the same thing.
The one thing I wanted to share with all of you today is that long before I had the honor of serving as President Trump's Homeland Security Secretary, I was a farmer. I was a rancher. In fact, I've worked on food policy for over 30 years. And I recognize that food policy is national security policy. A country who cannot feed itself, cannot take care of itself, and cannot provide for itself is not secure. And that we have to be able to feed ourselves to make sure that no other country ever controls us. And I've watched for decades as evil foreign governments, including China, have come into this country and they've stolen our intellectual property. They've manipulated their currency. They've treated us unfairly in trade deals. They've come in and purchased up our processing companies, stolen our genetics. In fact, I've worked in this building off and on commissions and projects and laws and different statutes to ensure that China did not completely take control of our entire food supply chain, recognizing that the United States of America would be in jeopardy if that ever were to happen. I've watched them come in and establish a presence in stealing our chemicals, in providing our fertilizer for us. And so 2 years ago, when I served as governor of South Dakota, we passed a law in our state that said China and 6 other foreign evil governments would never own our farmland. And I'm very proud to say that in South Dakota, China does not own any of our land, nor will they ever own any of our land.
Yeah, they don't actually own any of our land at all, if you're going to be specific about it. China, as a country, doesn't own any of our land. It is specifically Chinese nationals, Chinese companies, and so that could be a word of semantics, but let's go over the numbers because I know a lot of people are panicking about this. I agree that China, I think foreigners should not be owning our farmland, period. And we have a lot of foreigners owning our farmland, way more than Chinese nationals. In fact, they are a very small percentage. They own less than 1% of all U.S. farmland. Chinese nationals, we should say, owns between they own about 280,000 acres of U.S. farmland, depending on the year. Some, it fluctuates because there's buying and there's some selling. At the highest point, they've owned about 385,000 acres. Right now, they own about 275,000 acres. So they own less. They own less than 1% of all foreign held. Let me actually just show you this. There we go. This is Chinese-owned farmland in America, and it's not actually a lot. It's less than 1% of all foreign-held U.S. agricultural land. So Canada is actually the largest foreign owner with over 15 million acres. So China owns 275,000 acres, and Canada, well, Canadian nationals, I should say, not the Canadian government, owns 15 million acres. Canadian companies own 15 million acres. The total foreign ownership of U.S. farmland is about 3.4% of all U.S. agricultural land. So the United States government owns about 30% of the land area. So the U.S. federal government owns and manages approximately 640 million acres of land. That is 28 to 30% of the entire United States. But how much of this is agricultural land? I'm not really sure how much is actual farmland. Let's see here. While federal land comprising nearly a third of the nation's landmass, but much of it being non-agricultural, especially in the West, the true percentage of farmland that is federally owned is a small sliver. So yeah, there's really no stat on it, but it's not much of, so when you look at it that way. But let's go over the countries that do actually own, well, not countries. These are not countries. These are citizens of the countries, nationals of these countries that own the most U.S. farmland. Canada owns 15.3 million acres. The Netherlands own 5.2 million acres. Again, Dutch citizens, right? Italian citizens own 2.7 million. United Kingdom citizens own 2.6 million acres. German citizens own 2.5 million acres. And Chinese nationals own 275,000 acres. So really tiny in comparison to these other countries. And so when they go on and they talk about, oh, we need to have food security, we shouldn't let our adversaries, I didn't think we were at war with China. If we keep this rhetoric up, we will be at war with China. We're not at war with China. We're not supposed to be at war with China. Are they a competitor? Yes. An adversary? I don't know if we'd call them an adversary any more than I would call Canada an adversary. I mean, they're not our country. So we should be taking care of our own first. We should be protecting our own people and our own citizens. And we should, quite frankly, look at any foreign country as a potential adversary. I mean, at any time, any of them could turn on us and wage war against us. And, if Canada owns if Canadian citizens own 15.3 million acres of our farmland, what does that mean? I mean, let's just be realistic. What it means is nothing. Because in reality, it's on our soil, protected by our military, not by theirs. And if we were to go to war with Canada, what would happen to all that farmland? We would take it. We would take it back. We would confiscate it. That would be the end of it. Those companies would lose everything. They would lose all of their land, all of their investment. That would be the end of it. The same thing goes for China. It's really not a matter of national security for any of these foreign countries to own farmland. The issue is it takes away from Americans. It's not a matter really of national security. We just take the farm back. It's on our soil. It's not like they're going to ship it off to China and they're going to suddenly take 275,000 acres of our land and load it up on ships and move it over to China. They don't have the ability to do that. So that's obvious. So obviously there's no real national security threat. But what it does do is it takes away from the American farm owner who wants to have a farm. The problem is we don't really have a lot of Americans who want to own farms anymore. My family were farmers. My dad sold the farm. So I don't have to be a farmer because my dad sold the farm. And I don't want to be a farmer. My dad didn't want to be a farmer, and his dad, who was a farmer, didn't really want to be a farmer. So we have an issue in America where farmers don't want to be farmers anymore, and so they're selling the land, and who's going to buy it? Not another American farmer, because there aren't as many. So we have an issue with the dwindling farm culture in the country. Fewer families are farming. Fewer American-born citizens are wanting to farm. You've got a lot of foreign nationals that are wanting to farm or wanting to own that land, wanting to put in foreign workers on that land. And, that's more of an issue than anything. So I don't know. This just seems more like a political move than anything, even though I agree. I think the bigger issue that they could be tackling is the fact that there are homes that are being bought up by large corporations like BlackRock that come around and they buy homes and they rent to the American home who would otherwise be a homeowner. They instead turn them into renters. That would be actually a productive thing to tackle, and saying, look, if you're a foreign national, you can't, there's got to be some provisions around how many homes you could buy as a foreign national. You could own one property in the United States, a second home. But other than that, you can't be buying up globs and globs of homes and turning American citizens into renters. That is a much, much bigger issue. Also, another issue is you got guys like Bill Gates, by the way, who, Bill Gates owns more farmland than China. So here they are squawking about China, saying, oh, China's going to own all of our farmland, even though they own a sliver of it. And yet they don't say a word about Bill Gates, who has some really wonky ideas about food. He's talking about modifying food and artificial food and doing all of these things. Plus, he's got a ton of money. He's got all this farmland. He has a ton of money to pressure and lobby our lawmakers in order to favor his farms over the small farmers who are getting pushed out because of policies that are being enacted, because guys like Bill Gates are lobbying for those policies, because he wants to push the little farmers out so that he can buy the farmland or that he has less competition. I mean, it's guys like Bill Gates that are more of a threat because there's nothing stopping him. He's an American citizen. They're not talking about stopping Bill Gates. They're not caring about his weirdo food ideas. They're not thinking about any of that. They're just instead focused on China, when Canadian nationals own way more land than China. You got Americans who are renting because they can't own homes. And guys like Bill Gates are trying to force feed us all kinds of weird modified food products. So this is just a political maneuver. I mean, I agree with it to some level. Don't get me wrong. I just think that there's bigger fish to fry, and they're not frying that fish. And that is what I'd like to see. I'd like to see them focusing not on the political carrots that just get you motivated, to make you think, yay, MAGA's doing something. They're finally doing something about something. You should just know the facts that this isn't going to do anything about anything. China owns less than 1% of foreign-owned farmland. It's not going to do anything about anything. You have a bigger threat with Germany, the United Kingdom, Canada owning farmland. Bigger threat with Bill Gates, quite frankly, owning farmland, because unlike the Chinese, Bill Gates can actually lobby your politicians and donate a ton of money to them. And he could get the policies that he wants pushed from the farmland that he owns. He's the largest private farmland owner in the United States. And he has the money and the ability, unlike these foreigners, to lobby our politicians. He's a bigger threat. But they don't want to talk about Bill Gates, do they? No, they don't want to talk about that. They instead just want to focus on China, 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 because it is just red meat for the base. But don't fall for it. We're all feeling it. Costs are rising on everything: gas, groceries, home repairs. And if you're a homeowner, you've probably thought, should I call American Financing to refinance and pay off this credit card debt? Then you second guess yourself because that low mortgage rate you currently have, well, listen, that low rate, it's not saving you if you're drowning in credit card interest at 25% or more. That's the math no one wants to face, but it's costing you thousands. Here's the truth. If you're only making minimum payments, that debt will follow you for years. That's why people are calling American Financing, because they're saving customers an average of $800 a month by using their equity to finally break free from credit card debt. You owe it to your family to see what's possible. No upfront fees, no pressure. It costs you nothing to find out what you could save every month. And if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. So call American Financing today at 866-885-1948. That's 866-885-1948. AmericanFinancing.net/Iverson. Hey guys, thank you for watching this clip from the full Kim Iverson Show, which you could check out Monday through Friday, 5 p.m. Eastern at KimIversonShow.com. See you there.